Welcome back to Utah Youth Village. We are getting ready to start class 2. I hope you enjoyed our first section on the teaching family model and an introduction to Utah Youth Village. Today we're going to talk about teaching interactions. Teaching interactions really are where you're going to spend a lot of your time in your day-to-day dealings with the youth. They are a way to help our kids learn more positive pro-social ways of interacting with both their peers, their teachers, their parents, and of course with you and other people in the community. So it's really something that you're going to spend a lot of time on in your day-to-day with the kids. So the first thing I'd like to talk about with teaching interactions is the fact that they're really a tool. We're going to be adding a lot of tools to your toolbox in terms of your parenting skills, and this is going to be one of the basic tools that you use. They're a step-by-step approach that helps you work with the youth on building their social skills, correcting negative behaviors that they might be engaging in, helping them learn new behaviors, preparing them for difficult times, and praising them for all of the great things that they do. Teaching interactions are really a way for you to keep your relationship with the youth very strength-focused and very positive. So that's where we're going to put the bulk of our attention. Oftentimes as parents, we have to answer the question, okay, my child has done this bad thing. They've stolen something or they've misbehaved. What do I do now? Teaching interactions are really a good way that you will never not know, what do I do next? There will always be a next step. There will always be something that you can do. And as you'll see, as we move through the teaching interactions, if you're ever at a loss for something to do, our go-to is always going to be praise or empathy. If we can find something to praise about the youth in our home or our own children, we're always going to preserve that relationship, which always motivates kids to engage in more positive behaviors. As we move through these, you'll see how we are focused on the positive and how we are focused on the relationship, in addition to really working on building strengths and building skills in the youth that we work with. So this is an overview of our teaching interactions. You'll have in your manual a copy of this, and this will really be your go-to paper if you don't know what to do with the youth. You'll notice across the top that there are 3 columns. One says effective praise, the other one says preventive, and the final one says corrective. Those are the 3 basic types of teaching interactions that we do at Utah Youth Village. And you'll also notice that there are 4 skills on the right column of the paper, or of the screen, excuse me. And they are the basic skills that we initially start working with for most of the youth that come into your home. These skills are following instructions, accepting no, accepting feedback or criticism, and disagreeing appropriately. In this class, we're just going to go through a brief overview of the teaching interactions, and then we'll go more in depth with this in later classes. So why do we use steps in teaching interactions? That is a really good question. If you ask most parents if they use steps in their parenting, they will say no. They will just deny that they do that. What we have found is that when we use a systematic way of interacting with our kids, it helps us take the emotion out of it. It helps us take our own reactivity out of it so that we can respond to behaviors rather than reacting to behaviors. This benefits both the adults in the situation and the youth in several ways. First of all, with the youth, oftentimes they come to us with, you'll hear me often refer to tools in your toolbox, and this is very typical of our youth. They come to us with very few tools in their toolbox. Often they will respond with anger or sadness or isolation as the only tools they have to cope with behaviors or with feelings that they have. When we use teaching interaction, it helps us keep the focus on them being a good person that maybe has just engaged in a negative behavior. So it teaches them a better way, It highlights specific behaviors, both the great things that they do and the things that need to be corrected. It also sets them up for success because they learn a different way to do things. And finally, it provides positive motivation for them to listen to what you're saying and to be willing to learn. For the adults in this situation, as I previously mentioned, it helps us respond rather than reacting to behavior. We always know what our next step is going to be. It also helps keep us focused on the positive behaviors rather than the negative, and it is the most effective way to do parenting. This is where you will find more familiarity with things that you commonly say to your kids or the kids that you have in your home. You just did something wonderful. That was great. The reason we do this is, hey, let me know when you're done and then we can get some milk and cookies. Here, let me show you how to do that. Or, does that make sense? These common phrases and checks for understanding are really common in parenting, and what we do at Utah Youth Village is sort of take those really common parenting phrases and put them into a systematic framework so that you can remember to use them with the youth that you're working with. There are two vital components to teaching interactions. Those are the interactions themselves, which are the steps, and the second are the quality components, or in other words, the components of your relationship. Those are things like affectionate touch, humor, smiling, anything that reminds the child that you're on their side and that you have a strong relationship with them. Here's a quick overview of the quality components. We always try to use the youth's name, maintain a pleasant facial expression, and a calm voice tone. Also, proximity is important. In discussing proximity, when a child is upset, it's often best to keep your distance, but when you're praising a child, it's often okay and even encouraged for you to stand closer to the child and maybe even use some appropriate affectionate touch. Also, being on the same physical plane is really helpful because then you can give better eye contact to the youth and they can give better eye contact to you. Also, really any nonverbal communication that's positive are things that we include in quality components. Many of us have heard that a large majority of our communication isn't what we say, it's how we say it. It's also our body language and the things that help other people know that we are attached to them. So for example, a lot of nonverbal communication is in my facial expression. If I make a negative facial expression and say, wow, you did a really good job, the youth are not going to feel like they did a great job. But if I say, wow, you did a fantastic job at that, all of that, I said the same words, but there's a much different feeling. And those are the things that are involved in our nonverbal communication and things that are really important for the adults in these situations to manage. When we control our nonverbal communication, it shows concern for the youth, helps them trust and feel safe in our relationships with them, and it makes them less likely to act out negatively because they will be less fearful of the interactions that they're having with adults. It's important to remember that for a lot of the kids that we serve here at Utah Youth Village, their experiences with adults have been very negative and often based in a traumatic setting. So we try doubly hard to create a relationship of trust with them so that they can feel safe and connected to us. We're going to watch a video about what a teaching interaction looks like. This specific lesson is on following instructions, and it will be one of the main teaching interactions that you will practice with your youth every day.
Hi, my name is Chowie, and I'm a mom of a rambunctious and adorable young son. So your child doesn't want to follow instructions. I get it. It's happened to me with my child. There were days I want to just pull all my hair out. Fortunately, I learned a skill that helped my child follow my instructions, and it changed everything. Now I get to keep all my hair. Yes! steps are fairly simple. Step 1, get your child's attention. Step 2, give a simple, clear, descriptive instruction. Step 3, child says, okay, and immediately follows the instruction. And step 4, child returns to the parent and reports when it is finished. Following instructions is a lifelong skill. Adults have to be able to do this to be successful. Think about it. When you go to work, when you take a driver's test, when we cook, and even in cases where we might be corrected. This skill is useful for adults and children. Before we watch a few families learn and use this skill, I want to share some helpful tips. Tip 1, practice a lot and often. Practice with simple things like picking up an object, and when they've mastered that, move on to things that may be more difficult for them to do. Tip 2, teach following instructions as soon as you can to your children. Usually the younger the child begins using the skill, the more it becomes a habit and they will naturally follow your instructions. Tip 3, be consistent in using the steps. The more consistent you are, the quicker they'll catch on. Let's see how these parents teach their children to follow instructions.
Hey John, found this new way of listening and following instructions, and we're going to work on it together. Okay?
Really?
Yes, really. Now put away your phone and we'll be able to give you an extra hour after dinner. All right?
Okay.
Okay. So, here's the basic instructions. I'm going to give you an instruction and you're going to repeat what you understand, and then you're going to go and do it and come back and tell me about it. Sounds pretty simple, right?
I guess.
All right. I have this printout. I'll show you how to do it and then you can try. For this time, I'm going to pretend to be you and then you can pretend to be me. Why don't you have me do something like pick up these books and put them up on the bookshelf?
Okay. Why don't you pick up these books and put them on the bookshelf?
Okay. I picked the books up and put them back up on the shelf.
Okay.
So I followed your instructions. How does it make you feel?
Good.
All right, let's practice again. Now tell me to do something else.
Why don't you go make your bed?
Make my bed? What do you mean make my bed? Blake doesn't have to make his bed. His mom takes care of it for him. It seems like I have to do everything around the house. Why do you guys make me do everything? I'm just going to go live with Blake's family. So how does it make you feel when I don't do what you ask?
Not so good. Like I don't want to do anything for you.
And how does it make you feel when I do what you ask?
A lot better.
Right. Okay, when you do what I ask, I also like it and I want to do things for you. Like take you to a friend's house. Now it's your turn to practice following instructions. Will you go take care of the dishes?
Okay.
As you can see, printing out the form and keeping it close can be helpful. This dad made the role play work because he was willing to be silly and have fun with it. Your child is going to be almost as silly as you've been. The dad taught this skill when his son was in a good mood and used simple instructions to help his son practice. So it works on a teenager. But what about on a toddler? What's under there?
Oh.
Why don't you show? All right, what is that?
Toothbrushes.
Yeah, toothbrushes. We're gonna learn a new skill today called following instructions, okay?
Following instructions.
Yes, following instructions, okay?
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you to do something, and you're gonna say, okay, and then you're gonna go and do it. When you're done doing it, you're gonna tell me when you're finished, okay?
Okay.
It's kind of hard, so let's practice. How about I be you and you be the mommy?
Okay.
Does that sound like fun?
Yes.
Okay, so how about you tell me to do something like brush my teeth?
Mom, you have to brush your teeth.
I have to brush my teeth?
Yes.
Okay, here I go. All clean. I'm all done brushing my teeth. Now, do you want to try it? Okay, remember, I'm going to ask you to do it. You say okay, and then you tell me when you're done, all right?
Okay.
Okay, Mimi's, you need to go brush your teeth, okay? Nice job. All right.
I'm done brushing my teeth.
All done brushing your teeth? Good job. Should we go practice it in the bathroom now? Okay, let's go. This mom did great using the skill by preparing beforehand and having the items she needed ready before practicing. Following instructions is a skill you want to practice at a time when you and your child are calm and free from distractions. Remember, the more you role play using the skill, the easier it will be for your child to follow all types of instruction. As a mom of a toddler, we've been using the skill of following instructions to teach my son to put away his toys. We tell him, put your blue ball in the box, or put the red car on the shelf. We still need to remind him to say okay and tell us when he's done, but when he does, he says, all done. It's been really helpful. Following instructions is a skill your child will use throughout their life. It's worked for us.
So now you've watched a video on what a teaching interaction looks like, how to practice specific skills with your children, and how to do those in a positive way. There are several ways that we use teaching interactions here at Utah Youth Village. The first is in effective praise. The second is in preventive teaching. The third is in corrective teaching. It's really common for us to hear, praise is great, preventive teaching is great, corrective teaching is great, but what if I correct a child's behavior and they tell me to go fly a kite, or they don't want to do what I'm asking them to do? So the fourth way that we help you teach to children is with intensive teaching, and that's the teaching that you do when the behavior is escalating and the youth in your home just doesn't want to do what you want them to do. Today we're going to focus on an overview of the most positive ways to teach, which are effective praise, preventive teaching, and corrective teaching. Effective praise is the first and most important level of teaching. This is true for several reasons. It strengthens your relationship with the child, helps them know that they're doing things right. Also, it helps you praise an approximation of a behavior that you want to see. Approximating behavior is a little bit tough to describe, but let me give you an example. If you have a child who typically comes home and throws their backpack on the couch and then walks straight to their bedroom and closes the door, but today they stop, put their backpack in the hallway where it belongs, and talk to you for a few minutes before going down the hall and closing their door, some parents might think, yes, but they still went to their room and closed the door, and I'm disappointed in that. What we teach you to do is look for the positive. So today, your child brought their backpack in, put it where it was supposed to go, and spent a few minutes talking to you before they left the room. Those are all things that are great, that strengthen your relationship and give you something to build on. So we would encourage you to praise those behaviors with not only your own children, but the youth that you work with in our program. Also, praise helps us shape behaviors. Again, with the previous example, maybe the child didn't do things perfectly, but they definitely gave us something to build on. So that helps us shape the behavior into a final product of potentially the child coming home, putting their backpack where it's supposed to go, talking to you for a few minutes, and then changing their clothes and coming back to the kitchen table to maybe do study time or eat a snack. If that's what you're going for, then praise is going to help you shape that behavior into exactly what you're looking for. Okay, next we're going to talk about preventive teaching. We call preventive teaching the second most important level of teaching because it is the kind of teaching that takes place in the absence of any kind of behavior. So not any positive behavior or a negative behavior. It gives you an opportunity to help set the youth up for success because you're working with them in a neutral environment. So for example, if we take our previous example and you talk to your son or daughter and say, I was really proud of the way that you brought your backpack in and hung it in the hallway and spent a few minutes talking to me before you went to your bedroom. Something I'd like to teach you is how to do a study hour after school so that you can make sure that all of your homework gets done and you'll be able to do the things that you want to do in the evening. So here not only have we praised the child, but we've set up our expectations and we've also taught them what they can do better next time without any criticism, without any kind of a consequence, and without creating conflict between the youth and the parent. This is the essential function of preventive teaching, is really to set the child up for success and for you to be set up for success in your parenting. The question we ask here is, when is a good time to use preventive teaching? And typically what we say is the best time for preventive teaching is at a neutral, calm time. Anytime the child needs to learn something new, or if they've been struggling with something, it's best to not have to correct that behavior, but to stop it before it even has a chance to start and use preventive teaching. The next level of teaching is corrective teaching. We use corrective teaching when the use behavior has crossed acceptance tolerance levels. We're going to be talking about tolerances in a later class, but essentially your tolerances are your accepted level of behavior. And this is something that you typically agree on with your spouse that complies with the rules of your home and makes your home a calm and peaceful place to be. Once we've identified an inappropriate behavior, we let the child know that we understand that it's hard to do the right thing all of the time. Then we work to correct the inappropriate behavior. We issue a consequence to them and then give them a chance to practice the more appropriate behavior. These are the essential elements of corrective teaching. Some common inappropriate behaviors are talking back, not following an instruction. Anyone with a child probably aged 2 to 20 knows that when we give our kids feedback about their hair or their clothing or the cleanliness of a t-shirt, any number of things can create an emotional reaction in a child, and those are all situations that we would engage in corrective teaching. It's important when we're engaging in corrective teaching to think about what's the positive alternative. So if I give my daughter feedback about the cleanliness of her shirt and she talks back to me, I of course know that I don't like the talking back. What I really need to think about as a parent is, what do I want her to do instead? And what I would like my daughter to do is to accept my feedback, change her shirt, and then head off to school. That is the best possible outcome for both of us, because she goes to school in clean, nice clothing, and also we haven't been in a fight and we haven't damaged our relationship over something silly like a dirty t-shirt. Finally, we are going to talk about intensive teaching. If I've given my daughter this feedback on her dirty shirt and she proceeds to swear at me and yell at me and tell me that she's never going to school again, anyone with teenagers has probably had something similar to this conversation with their child. That's when we engage in intensive teaching. And intensive teaching is a little bit of a misnomer, because one of the key factors in making intensive teaching effective is actually keeping the intensity out of the situation. We call it intensive teaching because it's deeply focused on helping the child re-regulate their emotions and come back to a calm place where they can listen to you and that they can respond to you in a calm way. If youth are engaging in ongoing behavior, so an ongoing negative behavior such as not getting up for school in the morning, and this has happened on several consecutive mornings, then we will engage in intensive teaching, which again is just focused teaching on a specific behavior. Our first priority in intensive teaching is to make sure that we are helping the youth to calm down and that we are staying calm. We first focus on helping them get to a point where they can be emotionally regulated, where we're not triggering any trauma in them, and helping them feel safe so that they can then listen to what we have to say. It's very common with the youth that we work with that they, again, have a trauma history, which means that their brains will immediately go to a place of trauma that makes them really unable to think in a clear, logical way. So our focus is on helping their brain come back to a calm state, and then we can deal with any original issue. So for example, with my daughter, if she were really just frustrated and angry and yelling, it would not be appropriate or helpful if I continue to focus on her changing her t-shirt. My focus would then shift to helping her calm down so that we could have a rational conversation about why she is so upset in that moment, and then eventually return back to why she was so upset about my feedback on the t-shirt. Those are the key components of intensive teaching. Again, we are going to be studying all of these in depth in a later class, but because they're an integral part of what we do, it's important to understand where we are coming from, where you are going to be spending a lot of time with in your day-to-day interactions with the youth, and also how you really are an instrumental part in helping to change youth behaviors. Helping the youth, if they are just completely unable to control their behaviors, we shift our focus then to a strong focus on using coping strategies, relaxation, calming. Our youth who enjoy art or journaling are encouraged to engage in those behaviors. Typical parents, this is very, very counterintuitive. We want to keep the focus on the child and their misbehavior as a normal parent, right? We think about, well, my focus as a parent is on getting my child to behave or do the things that I need them to do. For our youth, they don't know how to use normal calming and coping strategies. As adults, we know that if we're upset, we can take a deep breath. We can excuse ourselves for a few minutes to calm down. We can count to 10. Some people use mindfulness or exercise. These are skills and strategies that we have learned over the years. And in the teaching family home that you will be responsible for, this is how we teach the youth to use those coping strategies when they're feeling emotionally overwhelmed or flooded with emotion. Our focus is on helping them change behavior, but we are not going to be effective in helping them change that behavior until they're in an emotional and mental frame of mind that they can hear what we're saying. So, although this might be counterintuitive for some parents, I would encourage you, as you go through the classes, not to think about your own upbringing. I was raised by parents that parented very differently than we do here at the Utah Youth Village. In all honesty, I didn't understand some of the concepts of the teaching family model until I had seen them applied for a good deal of time. So I would encourage you to go into the teaching interactions and into all of the classes that we do with an open mind, and also in the mindset of the fact that we deal with youth who have mental health diagnoses. They have all experienced some type of trauma or another. Some of them have substance abuse issues, anxiety, depression, etc. So they're not able to cope with things in a way that maybe you did or your children did. So to end the class, I'm going to have you take a quick quiz about what type of teaching you can use in each of these situations. Just take a few moments now and complete the quiz, and that will be part of your final competency exam. Thank you, and we'll see you for class 3.